Hanari pressed her chin into her palm and tried not to fall asleep. The clock on the classroom wall showed 9:47 a.m., which meant she still had 13 more minutes of calculus to survive. Teacher Yoon was drawing endless numbers and symbols on the whiteboard, explaining something about derivatives that Nari was supposed to care about. She did not care about derivatives. She cared about staying awake. Around her, 28 other students sat in neat rows, some paying attention, others clearly as bored as she was. Park Ji-won, her best friend, sat 2 seats away and was doodling in the margins of her notebook. Nari could see little cartoon faces and what looked like a robot wearing Teacher Yoon's glasses. Now, if we take the derivative of this function, Teacher Yoon said, tapping the board with his marker, we can find the rate of change at any given point. Rate of change. Nari almost laughed. If Teacher Yoon wanted to talk about rates of change, she could tell him about the time she watched an entire solar system's political structure collapse in 47 minutes. She could explain how quickly alliance treaties became worthless when faced with superior firepower. She could describe the exact rate at which hope died in people's eyes when they realized their planet was about to be invaded. But instead, she nodded politely and pretended to take notes. G1 slid a piece of paper across the narrow aisle between their desks. Nari glanced at it and saw a drawing of Teacher Yoon as a robot, complete with mechanical arms and laser eyes. At the bottom, Ji-won had written, "Does not compute fun." Nari smiled and drew a small thumbs up on the paper before sliding it back. It was a genuine smile, one of the few she managed these days. Ji-won had that effect on her. Her friend was cheerful and innocent and believed that the biggest problems in life were pop quizzes and cafeteria food. Nari envied her. The bell finally rang, and students began packing their bags with the practiced efficiency of people who had been waiting for freedom. Nari gathered her books slowly, in no particular hurry to get to her next class. Physics was even more boring than calculus, mainly because she already knew more about physics than Teacher Kim would ever teach. You learned a lot about physics when you commanded starships. "Earth to Nari," Ji-won said, appearing beside her desk. With a grin. "You look like you were going to pass out in there." "Just tired," Nari replied, shouldering her backpack. "Stayed up too late studying." It was not exactly a lie. She had stayed up late but not studying for school. She had been reading intelligence reports about border tensions in the Outer Rim and reviewing tactical assessments for 3 different star systems. The kind of homework that could prevent wars. They walked through the crowded hallway together, dodging younger students who were running to their next classes. Seoul Metropolitan High School was large and modern, with clean white walls and big windows that let in plenty of natural light. It was nothing like the cramped command centers and military vessels Nari was used to. "Hey, Nari!" She turned to see Kim Do-yeon jogging to catch up with them. He was tall and popular, the kind of student who seemed to excel at everything without trying very hard. His uniform was always perfectly pressed, his hair always styled just right. Most girls in their grade had crushes on him. Nari found him exhausting. "Hi, Do-yeon," she said politely. "I was wondering if you wanted to join the student council," he said, falling into step beside them. "We could really use someone like you." "Someone like me? You know, mature, responsible. You always seem so composed and smart. Way more mature than most of us." If only he knew why she seemed mature. If only he understood that she had been making life-and-death decisions while he was worried about which college to attend. She had commanded fleets of starships and negotiated with alien diplomats and watched good people die following her orders. That kind of experience aged you quickly. "Thanks, but I'm too busy with my studies," she said. "Come on, it would be fun. We meet twice a week and plan school events. Plus it looks great on college applications. I really cannot." "Sorry." Do-yeon looked disappointed but did not push further. He said goodbye and headed off to his next class, leaving Nari and Ji-won alone again. "You should have said yes," Ji-won said as they climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor. "Student council is not that much work and Do-yeon is really nice." Nari shook her head. "I cannot handle any more responsibilities right now." The truth was more complicated than that. She could not handle the idea of being responsible for anything or anyone ever again. She had spent 3 years carrying the weight of entire civilizations on her shoulders. She had made decisions that saved billions of lives and decisions that cost thousands more. The responsibility had nearly broken her. Now she just wanted to be a normal teenager who worried about normal things. Physics class passed in a blur of formulas and diagrams that Nari already understood. She spent most of the time staring out the window at the courtyard below, where younger students were eating lunch and playing games. They looked so young and carefree. She wondered if she had ever looked like that. Probably not. Even before the war, she had been serious and focused. Her parents always said she was an old soul in a young body. They had no idea how true that was. Now, when lunch finally arrived, Nari and Jiwon found seats at their usual table in the cafeteria. The food was typical school fare: rice, soup, kimchi, and some kind of meat that was probably beef but could have been anything. It was edible, which was more than she could say for military rations. "Did you see the news this morning?" Jiwon asked, picking at her rice. There was something about new trade agreements with some alien planets. "My dad says it is good for the economy," Nari nodded absently. She had not just seen the news. She had helped write the strategic analysis that made those trade agreements possible. Her recommendations had been passed through Admiral Wei to the diplomatic corps, ensuring that Earth got favorable terms without appearing too aggressive. "That is nice," she said. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to travel to other planets," Jiwon continued. "Do you think we will ever get to do that? Just regular people, I mean, not diplomats or soldiers? Maybe someday." Nari had traveled to dozens of planets. She had seen alien cities and strange landscapes and civilizations so advanced they seemed like magic. She had also seen those same places burning under enemy fire. Travel was not as glamorous as people imagined. After lunch, they had literature class with Teacher Park, who was young and enthusiastic and tried very hard to make classic poetry seem relevant to modern teenagers. Today they were reading works by Korean poets who had written about war and loss. "Can anyone tell me what this poem is really about?" Teacher Park asked, pointing to a verse on the whiteboard. Several students raised their hands, offering interpretations. "About love and sacrifice and the human condition." They were not wrong exactly, but they were missing something important. The poem was about the weight of command, about making impossible choices, about living with the consequences of your decisions. Nari knew because she had lived it, but she kept her hand down and let her classmates discuss themes they understood only in theory. The rest of the day passed quietly. History, English, and then finally the last bell of the day. Students poured out of the building like water through a broken dam, eager to get home or meet friends or do whatever normal teenagers did with their free time. Nari walked home alone, taking the long route through the residential streets near her house. The late afternoon sun was warm on her face and the air smelled like cherry blossoms and car exhaust. It was peaceful in a way that still surprised her. No alarms. No emergency briefings. No reports of enemy movements or civilian casualties. Just a normal Tuesday afternoon in Seoul. Her house was small but comfortable, with a tiny front garden that her mother maintained with obsessive care. Nari could hear the television playing inside as she climbed the front steps. Probably the news, which her parents watched religiously every evening. She opened the door and was immediately greeted by the smell of dinner cooking and the sound of her mother humming in the kitchen. "How was school today?" her mother called out. "Fine," Nari replied, the same answer she gave every day. "Any homework?" "A little." She climbed the stairs to her room and closed the door behind her. The space was neat and simple: a desk, a bed, a bookshelf filled with textbooks and a few novels. To anyone else it looked like a typical teenager's room, but hidden in the back corner of her closet, behind winter coats and old shoes, was a small metal box. Inside that box was a military communicator, obsolete by current standards but still functional. And as Nari pulled it out and powered it on, she saw that she had 3 new messages, all marked urgent. She sighed and opened the first message. It was from Admiral Wei, her former second-in-command who now headed Human Space Command. The Helix Confederation was requesting a diplomatic meeting, but their choice of location suggested they had ulterior motives. Wei needed her analysis of their probable strategy. The second message was from President Lee asking for her input on new defense policies. The third was from an old contact in intelligence, warning about unusual enemy ship movements near the neutral zone. The second message was from President Lee asking for her input on new defense policies. The third was from an old contact in intelligence, warning about unusual enemy ship movements near the neutral zone. Nari stared at the messages for a long moment. This was her real life, the one nobody at school knew about. While her classmates worried about exams and crushes and college applications, she was still helping to keep the galaxy safe. She typed quick responses to all three messages, her fingers moving automatically across the small keypad. Strategic recommendations, policy suggestions, tactical assessments. The kind of homework that could prevent interstellar wars. When she was finished, she powered down the communicator and hid it back in the closet. Then she sat at her desk and opened her school textbooks, ready to do her other homework. The normal, boring, wonderful homework of a normal teenager. Downstairs, she could hear her parents discussing their day over dinner. Her father was complaining about traffic. Her mother was talking about a new recipe she wanted to try. Normal problems, normal conversations. Nari smiled and started working on her math problems. For now, derivatives and physics formulas were enough responsibility for one day. Tomorrow would probably bring new crises, new urgent messages, new impossible decisions. But tonight, she was just a 17-year-old girl doing homework in her bedroom, and that was exactly what she wanted to be. The next morning started like any other Wednesday. Nari ate breakfast with her parents, packed her school bag, and walked the familiar route to Seoul Metropolitan High School. The cherry trees were in full bloom, their pink petals drifting down. Like snow, other students chatted and laughed as they walked, but Nari kept to herself, lost in thought. She had stayed up late the night before, not doing homework but analyzing the intelligence reports Admiral Wei had sent. The situation in the Outer Rim was getting worse. 3 merchant ships had gone missing near the asteroid fields, and there were rumors of pirate activity. The kind of problems that required military intervention, but that was not her responsibility anymore. She was just a high school student. Now, history class was first period, and Teacher Song was discussing recent galactic events. Nari took her usual seat near the back, next to the window where she could watch the courtyard below. Ji-won waved at her from across the room before turning her attention to the front of the class. Today we will continue our unit on the Galactic Liberation War, Teacher Song announced, pulling up a presentation on the smartboard. Can anyone tell me what they remember from yesterday's reading? Several hands went up. Kim Minjin, a serious boy who always did his homework, spoke first. The war lasted 3 years and ended with a peace treaty. It was mostly fought in the Outer Rim territories. Good, what else? Lee Sahi raised her hand. The textbook said it was resolved through diplomatic negotiations. Both sides agreed to stop fighting because the war was too expensive. Nari almost laughed out loud. Diplomatic negotiations. If only it had been that simple. Teacher Song nodded and clicked to the next slide. That is correct. The war officially ended when both sides signed the Harmony Accords. The conflict was relatively brief and casualties were kept to a minimum through careful diplomatic work. The slide showed a sanitized timeline of events, 3 years compressed into bullet points. Major battles reduced to single sentences. The complex web of alliances and betrayals simplified into a neat, clean narrative that would fit into a textbook. None of it was accurate. The war had not ended because of diplomatic negotiations. It had ended because Nari had led a desperate assault on the enemy's main command station, cutting off their ability to coordinate their fleets. She had sacrificed 2 entire battalions to create a diversion while her strike team infiltrated their headquarters. She had personally shot their supreme commander during the final battle, Ending the war in a single moment of violence that the history books would never mention. There had been nothing diplomatic about it. The identity of many key military leaders remains classified. Teacher Song continued, but we know that human commanders played crucial roles in the final victory. These brave individuals chose to remain anonymous, preferring to return to private life rather than seek glory. Ji-won turned around in her seat and whispered, I wonder who they were. Can you imagine being a war hero and not being able to tell anyone? Nari stared at her textbook and said nothing. My older brother Tae-yun served as a communications officer during the last year of the war, Ji-won continued quietly. He said, the real fighting was much more intense than what they teach us. He said there was this young human commander who was absolutely brilliant, like genius-level tactical thinking, but he never learned their name. Really? Nari managed to say. Yeah, Tae-yun said this commander saved his unit at least 3 times. Made decisions that seemed crazy but always worked out. He said they had to be young because they adapted so quickly to new situations. Older generals get stuck in their ways, you know? Nari nodded absently. She remembered saving Ji-won's brother's unit. The communications relay on Kepler Station had been under attack, and without it, the entire Third Fleet would have been cut off from command. She had ordered a risky flanking maneuver that drew enemy fire away from the station long enough for repairs to be completed. She had been 15 years old at the time. Tae-yun always said he wanted to meet that commander someday, Ji-won added, to thank them personally. The conversation was interrupted by Teacher Song calling for attention. Now, let us discuss the long-term effects of the war on Galactic. Politics. Nari spent the rest of the class period staring out the window, only half listening to the sanitized version of events she had lived through. When the bell rang, she gathered her books slowly, waiting for the classroom to empty before heading to her next class. In the hallway, she caught a glimpse of herself in the reflection of a trophy case. For just a moment, she saw not a 17-year-old student, but the young commander she had been. Serious eyes, straight posture, the weight of command evident even in the way she carried herself. She quickly looked away and hurried to the bathroom. The girls' bathroom on the 2nd floor was usually quiet during class periods. Nari stood in front of the mirror and examined her reflection more carefully. She looked tired, which was not surprising given how little sleep she had been getting. But there were other signs too, visible only to someone who knew what to look for. The small scar above her left eyebrow, barely visible under her makeup. She had gotten it during the Battle of Proxima Station when shrapnel from an exploding console had caught her in the face. The medics had done a good job repairing the damage, but the mark was still there. Her hands were steady, but she could see the faint white lines across her knuckles where she had been injured during hand-to-hand combat. Training. Most people would assume they were from normal teenage accidents, but Nari knew better, and her eyes. That was the biggest giveaway. They were the eyes of someone who had seen too much, done too much, lost too much. No matter how much she tried to act like a normal teenager, she could not change the way her experiences had marked her. She applied more makeup to cover the scar and tried to practice a more carefree expression. It felt fake, but it was better than nothing. The rest of the morning passed quietly. Math class, then science, then literature. Nari took notes and answered questions when called upon, playing the role of a dedicated student. It was easier than she had expected, mainly because the academic material was so simple compared to the strategic planning she was used to. During lunch, she and Ji-won found their usual table in the cafeteria. The food was the same as always, plain but edible. Around them, hundreds of students chatted and laughed, their biggest concerns being upcoming tests and weekend plans. You seem different lately, Ji-won said suddenly. Nari looked up from her rice bowl. Different how? I don't know. More serious, I guess. Like you're thinking about something important all the time. I'm just focused on my studies. It's more than that. Ji-won leaned forward, studying her friend's face. Sometimes you get this look like you're somewhere else entirely. And you always seem to know things about current events that the rest of us don't. Nari's heart rate increased slightly, but she kept her expression neutral. I watch the news, more than that. Remember last week when there was that incident near the Jupiter colonies? You said it was probably pirates before the news even confirmed it. How did you know? Because she had read the intelligence reports 12 hours before the story broke. Because Admiral Wei had asked for her assessment of the situation. Because she had helped coordinate the response that drove the pirates away. Lucky guess, she said. Ji-won did not look convinced, but she did not push the issue further. They finished their lunch in comfortable silence, then headed to their afternoon classes. The walk home after school was peaceful. Nari took her usual route through the quiet residential streets, enjoying the warm spring air and the sound of birds singing in the trees. For a few minutes she could almost pretend she was just a normal student walking home from a normal day, but as she approached her house, she could see her mother waiting by the front door with a worried expression. "Nari, there's someone here to see you," her mother said as soon as she was within earshot. Nari's blood turned cold. Had someone discovered her identity? Was her cover blown? Who is it? A man from the government. He said it was about a scholarship. Opportunity, relief flooded through her. That was the code phrase Admiral Wei used when he needed to meet in person. She followed her mother into the house, where a middle-aged man in a plain gray suit was sitting in their living room. "Miss Han," he said, standing up when she entered. "I'm from the Ministry of Education. We'd like to discuss some advanced placement opportunities with you." Her parents beamed with pride. "We'll leave you two alone to talk," her father said, guiding her mother toward the kitchen. As soon as they were alone, the man's demeanor changed completely. "Admiral," he said quietly, using her old military title. "We have a situation." Nari sank into a chair across from him. "What kind of situation?" 3 merchant vessels have gone missing in the Vega system. Intelligence suggests it's not pirates. This time, we think it might be remnants of the old Dominion fleet trying to restart the war. "That's impossible." "We destroyed their command structure. Their fleets scattered to the outer territories." "That's what we thought too. But the attack patterns match their old tactics, and we've detected energy signatures consistent with their weapon systems." Nari closed her eyes and rubbed her temples. She had hoped the war was truly over, that she could finally have a normal life. But apparently some fights never really ended. "What do you need from me?" "Your tactical assessment." "If it really is?" "Dominion remnants, you know their strategies better than anyone. You're the one who defeated them the first time." "I'll review the data tonight and send you my analysis." The man nodded and stood up. "Thank you, Admiral. I know you wanted to stay retired, but the galaxy is never really at peace," Nari finished. "I know." After he left, Nari sat alone in the living room for several minutes, staring at the wall. Her parents came back, asking excitedly about the scholarship opportunity. She told them it was just a preliminary discussion, nothing definite yet. That evening, she did her regular homework first. Math problems, science worksheets, an essay for literature class. Normal teenage responsibilities that felt both trivial and precious. Then she opened her laptop and accessed the secure files the government agent had left for her. Ship movements, attack patterns, energy signatures. The familiar rhythm of tactical analysis, the mental chess game of predicting enemy movements and planning countermeasures. By midnight, she had identified 17 possible scenarios and drafted response strategies for each one. She encrypted the files and sent them through secure channels to Admiral Wei, then closed her laptop and tried to sleep, but sleep would not come. Instead, she lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling and wondering how long she could keep living this double life. How long before someone at school noticed that she knew too much, reacted too quickly, carried herself like a soldier instead of a student? How long before the war came looking for her again? Outside her window, Sol slept peacefully under a blanket of stars. Most of those stars had planets orbiting them, and many of those planets had people living on them. People who went to sleep each night trusting that someone, somewhere, was keeping them safe. They had no idea that one of their protectors was a 17-year-old girl who just wanted to pass her calculus exam and have lunch with her best friend, Nari, pulled her blanket up to her chin and finally drifted off to sleep, dreaming of star maps and battle formations and the weight of command that she could never quite leave behind. Thursday morning started with chemistry class, and Nari was actually enjoying herself for once. Teacher Kim had divided the class into pairs for a lab experiment about chemical reactions. Nari was partnered with Jiwon, and they were working together to mix different solutions and record the results. "This is actually kind of fun," Jiwon said, carefully measuring blue liquid into a test tube. "I love how it changes color when you add the catalyst." Nari nodded, watching the solution turn from blue to bright green. Simple chemistry was relaxing after spending the previous night analyzing attack patterns and fleet movements. For a moment, she could almost forget about the crisis brewing in the Vega system. "Okay, now we add 3 drops of the acid solution," Nari said. Reading from their lab instructions, G1 was reaching for the dropper when every screen in the classroom suddenly flashed red. The chemistry experiment was forgotten as emergency alert tones began blaring from the school's speaker system. "Attention all students and faculty," came the principal's voice over the intercom. "We are receiving reports of unidentified spacecraft entering Earth's outer atmosphere. This is not a drill. Please remain calm and stay in your classrooms until further notice." The chemistry lab erupted in nervous chatter. Some students looked scared, others excited. Teacher Kim tried to maintain order, but even he looked worried as he turned on the classroom's wall monitor. The news was already covering the story. Nari watched the live footage and felt her blood run cold. 3 large ships were approaching Earth, moving in a formation she recognized immediately. They were Helix Confederation vessels, but something was wrong with their positioning. "Those ships look huge," whispered Lee Young-ho from the table behind them. "Do you think they're friendly?" asked Park Minji, her voice shaking slightly. Nari studied the ships more carefully. The formation was all wrong. Helix diplomatic vessels traveled in a specific pattern, with the main ship in front and escorts flanking it at precise angles. These ships were arranged defensively, like they expected trouble. "I need to use the bathroom," Nari said suddenly, standing up. "Right now?" Jiwon looked at her in confusion. "Shouldn't we stay here like they said? I'll be right back." Nari left the classroom before anyone could stop her. The hallways were empty except for a few teachers talking quietly in worried voices. She found the nearest bathroom and locked herself in a stall, then pulled out her old military communicator. Admiral Wei answered on the first ring. "Admiral, thank God," his voice crackled through the small speaker. "Are you seeing this?" "The Helix ships? Yes, something's wrong with their formation." "That's what we thought too. They're claiming this is a peaceful diplomatic mission, but their escort pattern suggests they're expecting an attack. Our intelligence says they're carrying full weapon loads." Nari closed her eyes and pictured the ship formations in her mind. "How many escorts?" 12 heavy cruisers plus the main diplomatic vessel. "They're requesting permission to enter Earth's inner system for talks with the United Earth government." "Don't let them," Nari said immediately. "That formation is for planetary assault, not diplomacy. They're using the diplomatic mission as cover. Are you sure? I fought the Helix for 2 years. I know their tactics. If this were a real peace mission, they would have sent a single ship with minimal escort. This is either a trap or they're genuinely scared of something." There was a pause on the other end. "Scared of what? I don't know yet. But something has them spooked badly enough to bring a full battle group to what should be a simple diplomatic meeting. What do you recommend?" Nari thought quickly. "Grant them permission to enter the outer system, but not beyond Mars orbit. Deploy our defense platforms, but keep them on standby, not active targeting. Send a message to their lead ship requesting clarification of their mission parameters. And if they refuse to stop at Mars, then you'll know it's not really a diplomatic mission. Understood. Can you stay available? We might need more analysis as this develops. I'm at school. I'll monitor the situation and contact you if I see anything concerning." Nari ended the call and hurried back to the chemistry lab. The other students were still gathered around the monitor, watching news coverage of the approaching ships. "Teacher, Kim was trying to continue the lesson, but no one was paying attention. "Where did you go?" Jiwan asked as Nari sat back down. "You missed the best part." They showed close-up footage of the alien ships. "Just needed some air," Nari replied, pretending to focus on their experiment, but her mind was racing. She kept glancing at the monitor, watching for updates. The news reporters were speculating wildly about the aliens' intentions, but they didn't understand what they were seeing. Only someone with military experience would recognize the subtle signs that this was not a normal diplomatic visit. 20 minutes later, her worst fears were confirmed. The news showed Earth's defense fleet moving into position around Mars, while the alien ships had stopped just outside the orbit of Jupiter. Both sides were now in defensive formations, and the tension was obvious even to civilian observers. "This doesn't look good," muttered Kim Do-yeon from across the room. "My dad works for the military," said another student. "He texted me that all personnel have been called to emergency stations." Nari's communicator buzzed with an incoming message. She discreetly checked it under her desk and saw an urgent request from Admiral Wei. The Helix ships were demanding to speak directly with the human commander who defeated the Dominion fleet. They specifically wanted to meet with the person who had ended the Galactic Liberation War. They wanted to meet with her. "I need to go to the nurse's office," Nari said, standing up again. "I'm not feeling well." This time Jiwan looked genuinely concerned. "You do look pale. Do you want me to come with you?" "No, I'll be fine. Just need to lie down for a bit." Nari left the classroom and made her way to an empty section of the school building. She found a quiet corner and called Admiral Wei back. "They're asking for me specifically," she said without preamble. "That's what we figured. The question is, how did they know to ask? The identity of our war commanders is supposed to be classified. The Helix have excellent intelligence networks. They probably pieced it together from battle reports and tactical analyses. So what do we do? We can't exactly send a 17-year-old high school student to negotiate with alien diplomats." Nari was quiet for a moment. "What do they want?" "They won't say. Just that they need to speak with the commander who ended the war. They're being very insistent about it." "Are our fleets ready? As ready as they can be?" "But if shooting starts, a lot of people are going to die." "Earth's orbital defenses are good, but not good enough to stop 12 heavy cruisers without taking heavy casualties." Nari stared out the window at the courtyard below, where younger students were still attending their regular classes, unaware of how close they might be to another war. "I need more information," she said finally. "Can you patch me into the communication channel with their lead ship? That's highly irregular, Admiral. With respect, irregular situations require irregular solutions. If they specifically want to talk to me, then maybe I should find out what they want before we start shooting at each other." There was a long pause. "All right. But audio only, and we're recording everything. If this goes bad, I'm pulling the plug immediately." "Understood." A few moments later, Nari heard the distinctive hum of an open communication channel. Then a voice spoke, translated by the computer into accented but clear Korean. "This is Fleet Commander Yeth of the Helix Confederation. I seek the human known as the Young Admiral, who commanded your forces during the final battle of the Liberation War." Nari took a deep breath. "This is she. What do you want?" There was silence on the channel for several seconds. Then Yeth spoke again, and this time his voice was different. "Respectful, almost reverent, Young Admiral. Your reputation precedes you. I am honored to speak with the one who brought honor to war itself. You brought a battle fleet to Earth's doorstep. That doesn't seem very honorable to me. The escort is necessary. There are those who would see our mission fail, who profit from continued conflict between our peoples. I come seeking your wisdom, not your surrender." "My wisdom about what? The Dominion remnants you defeated? They have returned, stronger than before. They have new allies, new weapons. They seek revenge not just against humanity, but against all who sided with you during the war." Nari felt a chill run down her spine. This was what she had feared, what her analysis the night before had suggested might be possible. How many ships? Our scouts report at least 50 vessels, possibly more. They are hiding in the dark spaces between systems, striking at merchant convoys and isolated colonies. They have already destroyed 3 Helix trading posts and a human mining station. Why come to me? Your people have their own military commanders. Because you are the only one who truly defeated them. You understand their weaknesses, their patterns of thought. Our commanders fought them to a standstill, but only you found a way to end the war decisively. Nari closed her eyes. She had hoped her war was over, that she could live as a normal teenager, but the galaxy, it seemed, had other plans. I need to see your intelligence data, she said. Ship movements, attack patterns, anything you have. You will help us? I'll consider it. But first, I need your fleet to pull back to the asteroid belt. Your current position is making Earth's military nervous, and nervous people make bad decisions. As you wish, young Admiral, I will transmit our data immediately. The communication channel closed, and Nari was alone again in the empty hallway. Through the windows, she could see her classmates still in their chemistry lab, still mixing solutions and recording results. Their biggest worry was whether they would get a good grade on the experiment. Meanwhile, she was once again being asked to help prevent a war. Her communicator buzzed with another message from Admiral Wei. The Helix ships are pulling back as requested. Their data package is coming through now. What do you need from us? Nari looked at her watch. She had been gone from class for almost 30 minutes. Teacher Kim would be wondering where she was, and Ji-won would be worried. I need to get back to school, she typed. I'll analyze their data tonight and get back to you with recommendations. Are you sure you can handle this? We could bring you in officially. No, the moment I walk into a military facility, someone will recognize me. My cover will be blown. And then I'll never have a normal life. I can do this from home. She put the communicator away and walked back toward the chemistry lab. As she turned the corner, she nearly ran into Ji-won, who was standing in the hallway looking worried. There. You are, Ji-won said. I was starting to get concerned. The nurse said you never showed up at her office. Nari's mind raced, searching for a plausible excuse. I just needed some quiet time. This whole situation with the alien ships has me feeling anxious. Ji-won studied her friend's face carefully. You know, for someone who's anxious about the ships, you seem remarkably calm about the whole thing. What do you mean? I mean, everyone else in class is either terrified or excited, but you just seem focused, like you're analyzing the situation rather than worrying about it. Nari forced herself to shrug casually. I guess I just handle stress differently. Maybe, or maybe you know something the rest of us don't. Before Nari could respond, the emergency alert tone sounded again. This time, the principal's voice carried. Good news. Attention students and faculty. We have received word that the situation with the unidentified spacecraft has been resolved peacefully. The vessels have identified themselves as diplomatic envoys and are proceeding to the outer system for scheduled negotiations. Normal classes will resume immediately. Cheers erupted from classrooms throughout the building. Students began filing back into the hallways, chattering excitedly about the crisis that had turned out to be nothing more than a false alarm. But Nari knew better. This was not a false alarm. This was the beginning of something much worse. As she and Ji-won walked back to the chemistry lab, Nari caught her reflection in a window and saw not a high school student but a military commander already planning her next move. The war she thought she had left behind was calling her back, and this time it might be harder to hide her true identity. The experiment solutions had been put away while they were gone, but Teacher Kim was already setting up new materials for the next class period. Life was returning to normal, at least on the surface, but Nari knew that normal was an illusion. Somewhere in the dark spaces between the stars, an enemy was gathering strength, preparing for revenge, and once again it would fall to her to stop them. Friday morning felt different. The crisis with the Helix ships had been resolved publicly, but Nari knew the real danger was just beginning. She had spent most of Thursday night analyzing the intelligence data Fleet Commander Yeth had provided, and what she found was deeply troubling. The Dominion remnants were not just regrouping. They were actively recruiting new allies and building a coalition of species that felt abandoned after the war. Worse, they had somehow acquired advanced weapons technology that hadn't existed during the original conflict. Nari walked to school, with heavy thoughts weighing on her mind. The cherry blossoms were still falling, but they looked less beautiful now, more like snow covering a battlefield. Literature class was first period, and Teacher Park was in an unusually serious mood. He had planned a special lesson about war poetry, inspired by the previous day's events. Yesterday's situation with the alien ships reminds us that peace is never guaranteed, Teacher Park said, writing on the whiteboard. Today we'll examine poems written by soldiers and commanders who experienced the weight of leadership during wartime. Nari's stomach tightened. Of all the days for this particular lesson, Teacher Park read aloud from a poem by a Korean War veteran. The words spoke of sleepless nights, impossible decisions, and the burden of sending young people into danger. Around the classroom, students listened with the detached interest of people who had never experienced real responsibility. Can anyone imagine what it would be like to command soldiers in battle? Teacher Park asked. To make decisions that determine who lives and who dies. Several students raised their hands to offer theoretical answers. Kim Do-yeon talked about the honor of leadership. Lee Sahi mentioned the importance of courage. Their responses were thoughtful but academic, based on movies and books rather than experience. Miss Han, Teacher Park said suddenly, you've been very quiet. What do you think it would feel like to carry that kind of responsibility? All eyes turned to Nari. She looked down at her desk, trying to find words that would sound like speculation, rather than memory. I think, she said slowly, it would be the loneliest feeling in the world. Everyone would be looking to you for answers, but you would know that any mistake could cost lives. You would have to make decisions with incomplete information, and you would have to live with the consequences forever. The classroom fell silent. Teacher Park nodded approvingly. That's a very mature perspective. Have you given this topic much thought before? Sometimes I wonder about the people who fought in the recent war, the ones whose names we don't know. They must carry heavy memories. Indeed they do. For homework this weekend, I want everyone to write an essay about leadership under pressure. Think about what qualities a person would need to command others during a crisis. After class, Jiwon caught up with Nari in the hallway. That was really insightful, what you said in there. You sounded like you really understood what it would be like. It's not hard to imagine, Nari replied, trying to sound casual. Maybe. But most people our age think about leadership in terms of student council or sports teams. You talked about it like you really understood the weight of life and death decisions. Before Nari could respond, her communicator buzzed with an urgent message. She glanced at it discreetly and felt her blood run cold. There had been another attack. This time on a space station in the Outer Rim. The commander was someone she knew personally from the war. I need to use the bathroom, Nari said quickly. Again? You've been doing that a lot lately. Nari was already walking away, leaving Jiwon standing confused in the hallway. She found an empty classroom and called the number in the message. Commander Yoon, a familiar voice answered. Thank God you called. What's the situation? We're under siege. 3. Dominion ships appeared out of nowhere and started bombing our defensive installations. We've lost 2 docking bays and our main communications array. Nari could hear explosions in the background. How many people are on the station? About 800 civilian contractors, plus my security team of 50. The Dominion ships are demanding our surrender, but they're not offering any guarantees about prisoner treatment. What are your defensive capabilities? Limited. We have 4 patrol ships and some mounted weapons, but nothing that can take on 3 heavy cruisers. Nari closed her eyes and visualized the station's layout. She had visited it twice during the war, once for resupply and once for diplomatic meetings. It was built into a large asteroid with multiple levels connected by central shafts. Are the mining tunnels still operational? Yes, but I don't see how that helps. The tunnels only go deeper into the asteroid. Commander, listen carefully. The mining tunnels connect to the old ore processing center, which has its own power grid. If you can get your patrol ships into the tunnels through the maintenance bays, you can use the processing center as a hidden launch point. That's impossible. The tunnels are too narrow for ships. Not for patrol ships. I've seen the specifications. You'll have maybe 2 meters of clearance, but it can be done. Launch a surprise attack from inside the asteroid while they're focused. On the main docking bays, there was a pause. That's insane. One mistake, and we lose all our ships in a tunnel collapse. Commander, do you trust me? Of course, Admiral. Your tactics saved my life during the war. Then do exactly what I'm telling you. Move your ships into the tunnels now, before the Dominion realizes what you're planning. Attack their engines first, then their weapon systems. They won't expect an assault from below. Understood. Beginning the maneuver now. The call ended, and Nari leaned against the wall, feeling the familiar weight of command settling on her shoulders. Somewhere in space, 50 people were risking their lives based on her tactical advice. If she was wrong, they would all die. She made her way back to the main hallway, where students were changing classes between periods. Everyone looked so young and carefree, worried about tests and social drama instead of life-and-death military. Operations.G1 was waiting by her locker. You missed math class. Teacher Yoon asked where you were. Still not feeling well. I think I might be coming down with something. You know, Nari, I'm starting to worry about you. You've been acting strange for weeks. Disappearing randomly, looking tired all the time. And yesterday, during the ship crisis, you seemed more concerned with analyzing the situation than actually being scared. Nari opened her locker and pretended to look for something. I just handle stress differently than most people. It's more than that. Sometimes when you think no one is looking, you get this expression on your face like you're remembering something painful. And you know things about current events that normal students wouldn't know. I watch a lot of news. Nari, please, I'm your best friend. If something is wrong, you can tell me. Before Nari could respond, her communicator buzzed again. She checked it and saw a message from Commander Yoon. Mission successful. All Dominion ships disabled. Station secure. Thank you, Admiral. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by the realization that Jiwon was studying her face intently. What was that? Jiwon asked. What was what? You just looked relieved about something. Really relieved, like you got good news about something important? Nari closed her locker and shouldered her backpack. I should get to class. Nari, wait. Jiwon grabbed her arm gently. I know something is going on with you. You can trust me. For a moment, Nari was tempted to tell her everything. To explain about the war, about her real identity, about the impossible burden she carried. But then she remembered why she had chosen to live a normal life. Some secrets were too dangerous to share. I'm fine, Jiwon, really just stressed about school. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Physics, chemistry, more literature. Nari went through the motions of being a student while her mind remained focused on military matters. The successful defense of the space station was good news, but it was also proof that the Dominion remnants were becoming bolder. During lunch, the cafeteria buzzed with conversation about yesterday's alien ships. Most students seemed to think it had been an exciting adventure, a break from the routine of school life. They had no idea how close they had come to witnessing the start of another war. My dad said the government handled the situation perfectly, Kim Do-yeon announced to their table. Shows that our military leaders know what they're doing. If only he knew that one of those military leaders was sitting 3 seats away from him, picking at her rice and trying to look like a normal teenager. After school, Nari walked home alone, taking the long route to give herself time to think. The cherry blossoms were still falling, and she found herself remembering other springs on other worlds. During brief moments of peace between battles. At home, her parents were watching the evening news. The anchor was discussing the diplomatic success with the Helix Confederation, praising the unnamed negotiators who had prevented a crisis. It's amazing how these situations get resolved so quickly, her mother said. Someone must be very good at their job. The heroes we never hear. About, her father added, the people who work behind the scenes to keep us safe. Nari excused herself to her room and closed the door. She had homework to do, both the normal kind and the military kind. Teacher Park's essay about leadership under pressure would be easy to write, perhaps too easy. She would have to be careful. Not to sound too knowledgeable. Her secure communicator had several new messages. Updates on the Dominion situation, requests for strategic analysis, reports from various commanders throughout the galaxy. The galaxy was never really at peace, she reflected. There was always another crisis, another threat, another impossible decision to be made. She spent the next 3 hours working through the military problems, providing tactical advice and strategic recommendations to people who were fighting. Battles she could only support from her bedroom in Seoul. When she was finally finished, she opened her school textbooks and began working on her regular homework. Math problems that seemed trivial after calculating fleet movements and supply lines. Science questions that were elementary compared to the physics of interstellar warfare. As she worked, she found herself thinking about Jiwon's questions. Her friend was getting suspicious, asking too many pointed questions. How long before someone else noticed her unusual knowledge and composure? How long before her carefully constructed normal life began to fall apart? Outside her window, Seoul sparkled, with millions of lights. Each light represented families going about their evening routines, children doing homework, parents watching television, teenagers worrying about normal teenage problems. They all trusted that someone, somewhere, was keeping them safe. They had no idea that one of their protectors was a 17-year-old girl who just wanted to finish high school and have lunch with her best friend. Nari closed her textbooks and prepared for bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new crises, new impossible decisions. But tonight, for a few hours, she could pretend to be nothing more than a tired student getting ready for another day of classes. The war might be calling her back, but she was determined to hold on to her normal life for as long as possible. Even if it meant carrying the weight of the galaxy on shoulders that were still technically too young to vote. Monday morning brought unexpected news. Principal Kim announced over the intercom that Seoul Metropolitan High School would be hosting a very special guest. Ambassador Keth of the Helix Confederation would be visiting to speak about cultural exchange and galactic cooperation. Nari nearly dropped her pencil when she heard the announcement. Ambassador Keth was not just any diplomat. During the war, he had been Fleet Commander Keth, one of the most dangerous enemy tacticians she had ever faced. They had fought each other across 3 star systems before circumstances forced them to become unlikely allies. "This is so exciting," Jiwon whispered during their morning assembly. "A real alien ambassador coming to our school. I wonder what he looks like." Nari knew exactly what he looked like. Keth was tall and reptilian, with scales that shifted color based on his mood and sharp intelligence in his yellow eyes. He was also one of the few beings in the galaxy who knew her real identity. The assembly hall was packed with students and teachers, everyone eager to see their first alien visitor. When Ambassador Keth walked onto the stage, accompanied by human diplomatic staff, a murmur of amazement rippled through the crowd. He was indeed impressive. Nearly 7 feet tall, with green-gold scales and a presence that commanded attention. He wore formal diplomatic robes rather than the military uniform Nari remembered, but his bearing was unmistakably that of a warrior. "Students and faculty of Seoul Metropolitan High School," he began, his translated voice carrying clearly through the hall's speakers. "I am honored to visit your institution of learning." Nari sank lower in her seat, hoping to remain unnoticed in the crowd. But as Keth's gaze swept across the assembled students, his eyes found hers and held them for just a moment. The slightest nod of recognition passed between them before he continued his speech. "During the recent conflict that your people call the Liberation War, I learned much about human courage and ingenuity. Your species has a remarkable capacity for tactical thinking and moral leadership, even among your youngest members." Several teachers beamed with pride at this praise of human students. They had no idea how specific and personal that comment was. I had the privilege of facing a human commander whose strategic brilliance was matched only by their sense of honor. This young leader showed me that even in the midst of war, it is possible to maintain dignity and respect for one's enemies. Nari felt her cheeks burning. Keth was being careful with his words, but anyone who knew the details of their encounters would understand exactly whom he was describing. The war taught us that the greatest victories come not from defeating our enemies, but from turning them into allies. That young commander could have destroyed my fleet when they had the advantage, but instead chose to offer terms that allowed both our forces to survive and eventually work together. The assembly continued for another 20 minutes, with Keth discussing trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, and the importance of peaceful cooperation between species. When he finished, Principal Kim announced that the ambassador would be meeting with select honor students for a more detailed discussion. Nari's heart sank when her name was called as one of the chosen students. The meeting took place in the school's conference room, with about 15 students sitting around a large table. Ambassador Keth sat at the head, flanked by his diplomatic staff and several teachers. His presence seemed to fill the entire room. "I understand you are among the most accomplished students in your school," Keth said, his yellow eyes moving from student to student. "Excellence in education often translates to excellence in leadership. I'm curious about your thoughts on the challenges facing young people in the modern galaxy." Students began asking questions about life on other planets, alien cultures, and opportunities for interstellar study. Keth answered each question thoughtfully, but Nari noticed that his attention kept drifting back to her dot when Kim Do-yeon asked about career opportunities in galactic diplomacy. Keth's response was clearly directed at Nari. The most effective leaders are often those who understand multiple perspectives. Someone who has experienced conflict firsthand, who has made difficult decisions under pressure, brings invaluable insight to diplomatic negotiations. Lee Sahi raised her hand. "Ambassador, what qualities do you think make a good leader?" "Wisdom beyond one's years. The ability to see patterns that others miss. Most importantly, the courage to do what is right even when it is difficult." His gaze settled on Nari again. "I have known leaders who possessed these qualities while still very young. Age is not always a barrier to greatness." The meeting continued for another hour, but Nari found it increasingly difficult to concentrate. Every comment Keth made seemed to contain a hidden reference to their shared history. By the time the session ended, she was convinced that several students were starting to notice the ambassador's unusual interest in her dot. As students filed out of the conference room, Keth made a subtle gesture to his diplomatic staff. "I would like to speak privately with Miss Han for a moment." Her essay on interstellar relations was particularly insightful. Nari had not written any essay on interstellar relations, but she understood that this was Keth's way of arranging a private conversation. When the room was empty except for the two of them, Keth's formal diplomatic demeanor relaxed slightly. "Admiral," he said quietly in his own language, which Nari understood from her military language training. "It is good to see you again." "Ambassador," she replied in the same language. "This is unexpected. I requested this assignment specifically to see how you were adapting to civilian life. Your government was reluctant to reveal your location, but I convinced them that checking on your welfare was a matter of diplomatic importance. I'm fine, adjusting well." Keth studied her face carefully. "Are you? You look tired? And I suspect your secret weighs heavily on you. It's manageable, is it?" "I have been monitoring galactic intelligence reports. You are still providing tactical advice to military commanders throughout the sector." "That does not sound like retirement to me." Nari shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "The galaxy is never really at peace." "No, it is not. But you cannot save everyone, Admiral. You cannot solve every crisis. At some point, you must trust others to carry the burden. People die when I'm not involved. The attack on Commander Yoon's station would have failed without my tactical advice. And how many other stations have been successfully defended by their own commanders? How many crises have been resolved without your intervention?" You cannot. Take responsibility for every military action in the galaxy. They spoke for several more minutes, with Keth gently probing about her mental state and her plans for the future. Despite their former status as enemies, Nari found his concern genuine and comforting. When their conversation ended, Nari returned to her regular classes, but the damage was already done. During lunch, Yuan cornered her with a barrage of questions. Okay. What was that about? Juwan demanded. The ambassador clearly knew you somehow. He kept looking at you during the assembly, and then he specifically asked to speak with you privately. He said he liked my essay on interstellar relations. What essay? We haven't written any essays on that topic. Nari realized her mistake. Immediately. I meant the essay I wrote for the exchange student program application. What exchange student program? Nari, you're lying to me. Before Nari could respond, her communicator buzzed with an urgent alert. She glanced at it and saw reports of a major pirate attack on a civilian transport convoy. The situation was deteriorating rapidly, and Admiral Wei was requesting immediate tactical consultation. I have to go, Nari said, standing up abruptly. Go. Where? Lunch period isn't over? The nurse's office? I'm still not feeling well, but Jiwon was faster. She grabbed Nari's wrist and saw the military communicator in her hand. What is that? Jiwon's voice was barely a whisper. Nari stared at her best friend, realizing that her carefully maintained secret was finally crumbling. The communicator continued to buzz with urgent messages, each one a reminder of the responsibilities she could not abandon. Jiwon, I can explain. That's military equipment, isn't it? And you understood what the ambassador was saying when he spoke in his own language. I saw your face change. Please, just let me handle this crisis first, and then we can talk. Crisis? What crisis? Jiwon's eyes widened as understanding began to dawn. The pirate attack that's being reported on the news. You're involved in that somehow. Nari made a decision that would change everything. Yes, I need to help coordinate the rescue operation. But I need you to trust me and let me do this. I don't understand. How are you involved in military operations? You're 17 years old. It's complicated. Please, Jiwon, people will die. If I respond to this? The urgency in Nari's voice convinced Jiwon to step back. Fine, but afterward you're going to tell me everything. Nari found an empty classroom and contacted Admiral Wei. The situation was worse than she had initially thought. 23 civilian ships were under attack by a coordinated pirate fleet, and the nearest military vessels were hours away. What are their defensive capabilities? Nari asked. Minimal. Most of the ships are cargo haulers with basic shields. The convoy's escort consists of 4 patrol ships. And the pirates? 12 attack vessels, well-armed and coordinated. They're demanding cargo and passengers for ransom. Nari closed her eyes and visualized the tactical situation. Are the civilian ships still in formation? Yes, but barely. They're trying to stay together while the escorts engage the pirates. That's their mistake. The convoy formation makes them easier targets. Order the civilian ships to scatter in random directions while the escorts create a diversion. Some of the pirates will pursue individual ships, breaking up their formation. That's risky. If the escorts are overwhelmed, Admiral, trust me, have the escorts focus on the pirate command ship. Take out their coordination, and the rest of their fleet will lose cohesion. Meanwhile, the scattered civilian ships should head for the nearest asteroid field where they can hide among the rocks. The rescue operation took 2 hours to coordinate. Nari provided real-time tactical advice while pretending to attend her afternoon classes. By the time the last civilian ship was safely rescued, she was emotionally and mentally exhausted. When school ended, Jiwon was waiting by her locker. Ready to talk? Jiwon asked. Nari nodded, knowing that her normal life was about to end forever. They walked to a quiet park near the school and sat on a bench under the blooming cherry trees. During the Galactic Liberation War, Nari began slowly, I was not a normal teenager attending school. What were you? I was Admiral Han Nari, Supreme Commander of the 7th Human Defense Fleet. Jiwon stared at her for a long moment. You're serious? I commanded over 300 ships and 50,000 personnel. I fought in 12 major battles and negotiated the peace treaty that ended the war. But you're my age. How is that possible? I was 15 when the war started, 16 when it ended. The military needed tactical minds more than they needed age and experience. I had a gift for seeing patterns in enemy behavior and predicting their strategies. So when you knew about the pirate attack patterns, when you seemed to understand what the ambassador was talking about, I was drawing on 3 years of commanding fleets in actual combat situations. Jiwan was quiet for several minutes, processing this information. Why did you tell me? Because you're my best friend, and I couldn't keep lying to you, and because I think my secret is going to come out anyway. Too many people are starting to notice that I'm not exactly a normal student. What happens now? I don't know. I wanted to have a normal life, to just be a teenager for a while, but the galaxy keeps pulling me back into military situations. Jiwan looked at her friend with new eyes, seeing not just a fellow student, but a living legend who had shaped galactic history. You saved billions of lives, she said finally, and I got thousands of people killed in the process. Command is not as glorious as people think. They sat together in the fading afternoon light, both understanding that their friendship had fundamentally changed. Nari was no longer just a smart, mysterious classmate. She was someone who had carried the fate of civilizations on her shoulders. Before she was old enough to drive a car, I won't tell anyone, Jiwan promised. But Nari, you can't keep living this double life forever. It's eating you alive. I know. I just don't know what the alternative is. Maybe you don't have to choose between being a normal teenager and being a military leader. Maybe you can find a way to be both. As they walked home together, Nari wondered if her friend was right. Perhaps it was time to stop hiding from her past and find a way to integrate her two identities. The cherry blossoms continued to fall around them, covering the ground with pink petals that reminded Nari of the beauty that still existed in a galaxy that always seemed to be on the edge of war. 2 weeks passed after Nari's confession to Jiwan, and life settled into a new routine. Her friend kept the secret as promised, but their relationship had changed in subtle ways. Jiwan now watched Nari with a mixture of awe and concern, understanding the weight her friend carried every day. The fragile balance was shattered on a Tuesday morning when Nari's communicator screamed with the highest level emergency alert. She was in math class, trying to focus on quadratic equations when the device began vibrating urgently in her backpack. The sound was muffled, but Nari recognized the pattern immediately. Something catastrophic was happening. "Teacher Yoon, may I be excused?" she asked, raising her hand. "I'm not feeling well." Teacher Yoon nodded absently, focused on his equations. Nari gathered her things and left the classroom, Jiwan's worried eyes following her dot in the empty hallway. Nari checked her communicator and felt her blood turn to ice. A civilian transport carrying 3,000 passengers had been captured by Dominion forces. The rescue mission was going wrong. Ships were being destroyed, people were dying, and the military commanders on scene were making tactical errors that would get everyone killed. Admiral Wei was requesting immediate consultation. Nari looked around. The quiet school hallway, with its bulletin boards advertising club meetings and study groups. Through the windows, she could see students in the courtyard eating lunch and playing games. Normal teenagers living normal lives. She made a decision that would change everything, instead of finding an empty classroom to provide remote tactical advice. Nari walked straight to the principal's office. "I need to make an emergency phone call," she told the secretary. "It's a family emergency." "Of course, dear. You can use the phone in the conference room." But instead of calling her family, Nari contacted Admiral Wei directly. "Admiral, I need immediate transport to the nearest military facility. I'm coming out of retirement." "Are you sure?" "Once you officially return to active duty, you're civilian. Cover will be blown." The cover was already failing. And right now, 3,000 people are going to die unless someone who knows what they're doing takes command of that rescue operation. Transport will be at your location in 15 minutes. "Nari, hung up and walked back to her math class. She knocked on the door and gestured for Jawan to come out into the hallway. "I have to go," Nari said simply. "Go where?" "To save those people on the transport ship. The rescue mission is failing and they need me to take command." Jawan's eyes widened. "But if you leave school to go to a military facility, everyone will know who I really am." "Yes." "Are you sure about this?" "No, but I'm sure that I can't let 3,000 innocent people die when I have the knowledge and skills too." "Save them." They hugged quickly, both understanding that this might be the last time they saw each other as normal classmates. "I'll tell Teacher Yoon you had a family emergency," Jiwon promised. "Thank you for everything." Nari left through the school's main entrance and walked to the parking lot. A black military vehicle was already waiting, its driver a young officer who saluted when he saw her. "Admiral Han," he said respectfully. "It's an honor to meet you." The ride to the military facility took 20 minutes through Seoul traffic. During the journey, Nari received constant updates on the deteriorating situation. The Dominion forces had 3 heavy cruisers protecting the captured transport, and the human rescue fleet was taking heavy casualties trying to break through their defenses. At the military base, Nari was rushed to a command center where Admiral Wei was waiting. The room was filled with officers studying tactical displays and coordinating rescue efforts. "Admiral Han," Wei said as she entered. "Thank you for coming. What's the current situation?" "Bad and getting worse. We've lost 2 destroyers and a cruiser trying to punch through their defensive line. The Dominion ships are using the civilian transport as a shield, making it impossible to use heavy weapons." Nari studied the tactical display, analyzing ship positions and movement patterns. "They're not just using the transport as a shield, they're trying to draw our entire fleet into a trap." "What do you mean?" "Look at their formation. Those 3 cruisers are positioned to channel our approach into a specific corridor. They want us to mass our ships for a frontal assault. So we don't attack frontally. We spread out, attack from multiple directions. No, if we spread out, they'll destroy the transport and retreat before we can stop them. We need to give them exactly what they want." Wei looked confused. "You want us to fly into their trap?" "I want us to make them think we're flying into their trap." Nari turned to the communications officer. "Get me a direct line to the rescue fleet commander." Within minutes, she was speaking directly to the officers coordinating the rescue attempt. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded fleets in actual combat. "This is Admiral Han. I'm taking tactical command of this operation. All ships are to implement Formation 7 immediately." "Formation 7? The fleet commander responded. "Admiral, that's a frontal assault formation. We'll be flying directly into their weapons. That's the point. I want them to think we're making a desperate direct attack. But here's what we're really going to do." Nari spent the next 10 minutes explaining her plan. It was complex, risky, and required perfect timing. The fleet would appear to make a suicidal frontal assault while actually executing a carefully coordinated maneuver designed to exploit a specific weakness in the Dominion formation. "Admiral," the fleet commander said when she finished, "if this doesn't work, it will work, trust me." The battle played out on the command center's main display. Nari watched as her plan unfolded, calling out course corrections and timing adjustments as the situation developed. The other officers in the room watched in amazement as the young woman who looked like a high school student orchestrated a complex military operation with the skill of a veteran commander. The rescue succeeded, with minimal casualties. The Dominion ships were disabled, the civilian transport was liberated, and 3,000 lives were saved. "Incredible," Wei said as the last reports came in. "In all my years of military service, I've never seen tactical coordination like that." But Nari was already thinking about the consequences of her decision. "Admiral, I need to return to school immediately." "School?" "Admiral, you just proved that you're the most capable fleet commander in human space. We need you back in active service." "I'm 17 years old. I want to finish high school." "You can finish your education later. The galaxy needs you now." The galaxy will have to wait until I graduate. Before Wei could argue further, Nari was contacted by Principal Kim. Someone had seen the military vehicle pick her up from school, and there were questions about her sudden departure. I have to go back, she told Wei. If I don't return soon, people will start investigating. My parents don't even know where I am. The ride back to school was tense. Nari knew that her double life was becoming impossible to maintain, but she was not ready to give up her attempt at a normal teenage existence. When she arrived at Seoul Metropolitan High School, she found Jiwon waiting anxiously by the main entrance. How did it go? Jiwon asked. 3,000 people are alive because of a tactical maneuver I learned when I was 15 years old. And now? Now I go back to pretending I'm a normal student who was absent because of a family emergency. But pretending was getting harder. During her remaining classes, Nari found it difficult to concentrate on academic subjects that seemed trivial compared to the life and death. Military operations she had been coordinating hours earlier. After school, she walked home slowly, dreading the conversation she knew was coming. Her parents would want to know about her mysterious absence, and she was running out of plausible explanations. To her surprise, Admiral Wei was waiting in her living room when she arrived home. Admiral Han, he said formally. Standing when she entered, her parents were sitting on the couch, looking confused and concerned. Mom, Dad, Nari said quietly. There's something I need to tell you. The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult of Nari's life. She explained about the war, about her military service, about the impossible decisions she had made before she was old enough to vote. Her parents listened in shocked silence as their quiet, studious daughter revealed that she was one of the most famous military commanders in Galactic history. We had no idea, her mother whispered. All this time we thought you were just a normal teenager. I wanted to be a normal teenager. That's why I retired. But you can't really retire from who you are, her father said gently. Today proved that. When people needed you, you couldn't stay hidden, Admiral Wei spoke up. Mr. and Mrs. Han, your daughter is the most gifted tactical mind of her generation. The galaxy is safer because of her service. But she's just a child. Nari's mother said, in age, yes. But in experience and capability, she's one of our most valuable military assets. Nari shook her head. I don't want to be a military asset. I want to be a normal person. What if you could be both? Wei asked. What if there was a way for you to continue your education while also serving in an advisory capacity? Over the next hour, they worked out a compromise. Nari would finish high school as planned, but she would also accept an official consulting position with Human Space Command. She would provide strategic advice during major crises, but she would not be required to deploy to combat zones or take active command of military operations. It was not a perfect solution, but it was better than the impossible double life she had been trying to maintain. The next morning at school, news vans were parked outside the building. Somehow, word had leaked about Nari's involvement in the previous day's rescue operation. Students and teachers clustered around the entrance, buzzing with excitement and confusion. Did you hear? Kim Do-yeon said as Nari approached the building. They're saying one of our students is some kind of war hero. That's impossible, Lee Sahi replied. We're all just high school students. Jiwon caught Nari's eye and shrugged. Apologetically, Principal Kim wants to see you immediately, she said quietly. The meeting in the principal's office was surreal. Principal Kim, several teachers, and a government representative sat around the conference table while Nari explained her unique situation. So you're telling me, Principal Kim said slowly, that one of my students is a retired admiral who commanded fleets during the Galactic Liberation War? Yes, sir. And yesterday, while she was supposed to be in math class, she was actually coordinating a military rescue operation. That's correct. Teacher Park leaned forward. Miss Han, your essay on leadership under pressure suddenly makes a lot more sense. I tried to write it from a theoretical perspective. You wrote it from personal experience. The school administration was remarkably understanding. They agreed to work with the government to maintain Nari's enrollment while accommodating her new official role as a military consultant. Special arrangements would be made for times when she needed to respond to galactic emergencies. When Nari finally made it to her first class of the day, the entire room fell silent as she entered. Word had spread quickly through the schools. Social networks, and everyone now knew that their quiet classmate was actually one of the most famous military commanders in the galaxy. "So," Teacher Yoon said awkwardly, "should I call you Admiral Han or Miss Han? Miss Han is fine. I'm still a student here." The dynamics in the classroom had changed completely. Students who had barely noticed her before now stared with obvious awe. Others seemed intimidated, uncertain how to interact with someone who had commanded fleets before she could legally drive. Only Ji-won treated her the same as always. "You know," Ji-won said during lunch, "I'm kind of proud that my best friend is a galactic hero. I'm the same person I was yesterday." "No, you're not. Yesterday you were pretending to be a normal student. Today you're a normal student who also happens to be a war hero. There's a difference." That afternoon, Nari's new life as a public figure began in earnest. She attended a press conference where government officials announced her consulting role. Reporters asked about her experiences during the war, her plans for the future, and how she balanced military responsibilities with high school. "I'm still learning how to balance everything," she answered honestly. "But I've realized that trying to completely separate my two identities was impossible. Now I'm trying to find a way to be both a student and a strategic advisor." "Do you miss active military command?" a reporter asked. "Sometimes. But I also value the chance to have normal experiences like studying for exams and eating lunch with friends. Those experiences help keep me grounded." What advice would you give to other young people who feel they have adult responsibilities thrust upon them? Nari thought carefully before answering. "I would tell them that it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to want normal experiences. 2. Having unusual abilities or responsibilities doesn't mean you have to give up being young." The following weeks brought gradual adjustment to her new public role. Nari continued attending classes and doing homework, but she also consulted on military matters when needed. The crisis communications were handled more officially now, with proper protocols and support staff. Her classmates slowly adjusted to having a celebrity in their midst. Some remained awed and distant, but others began treating her normally again. The initial excitement faded as people realized she was still the same quiet, studious person she had always been. Kim Do-yeon finally got his wish when Nari agreed to join the student council. "We could use someone with your leadership experience," he said. "Just remember that planning school festivals is very different from planning military operations." "Maybe, but I bet you're good at organizing things." 3 months later, at the end of the school year, Nari stood on the stage during the graduation ceremony for the senior class. She had been chosen to give a speech about overcoming challenges, though the irony was not lost on her that she was still a junior. "When I was 15 years old," she began, "I thought I knew what my life would look like. I thought I would graduate from high school, go to university, and have a normal career. Life had different plans for me." She looked out at the audience. Seeing her parents in the front row, Admiral Wei in his dress uniform, Ambassador Keth, who had come to represent the Helix Confederation, and hundreds of students and families. "I learned that sometimes we don't get to choose our responsibilities. Sometimes circumstances force us to become more than we thought we could be. But I also learned that having unusual responsibilities doesn't mean giving up the right to normal experiences." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "The most important thing I've learned is that you don't have to choose between being extraordinary and being human. You can save the galaxy and still worry about your math homework. You can command fleets and still want to eat lunch with your friends. You can be a hero and still be a teenager." The applause was warm and sustained. As Nari left the stage, she felt something she had not experienced in years: balance. Her communicator buzzed with a message from Admiral Wei about a developing situation in the Outer Rim, but for the first time she did not feel the familiar weight of impossible choices. She would handle the military crisis professionally and efficiently. Then she would go home, do her homework, and call Jiwan to complain about their upcoming chemistry exam. The galaxy would always need protecting, and Nari would always be ready to help, but she had finally learned that being a hero did not require sacrificing her humanity. As she walked back to her seat in the auditorium, past rows of proud families and excited students, Nari smiled. She was Admiral Han Nari, tactical genius and savior of civilizations. She was also just a 17-year-old girl who was looking forward to summer vacation, and for the first time since the war ended, both of those things felt perfectly right.